The clatter of wooden divining blocks tossed upon stone floors punctuates murmured prayers. White wisps of fragrant smoke curl from hundreds of incense sticks and disappear among the aged beams above. Offerings of fresh fruits and cakes adorn the altars under the tranquil gaze of ornate images. Little children frolic while their mothers pray for another son. Old men in t-shirts smoke cigarettes and engage in animated conversation. These are all part of the timeless scene one encounters upon entering a Chinese temple in Taiwan. Paradoxically, despite the remarkably rapid development of Taiwan from a rural agricultural society to an industrialized complex of urban enclaves, traditional religion has flourished. Indeed, the ubiquitous temples of Taiwan are as much a feature of its skylines as are factories. Popular Chinese folk religion consists of a blend of practices and beliefs that have developed out of animism, ancestor worship, Confucian custom, Taoist thought, Buddhist ideas of salvation, and various folk beliefs. In Taiwan, these forms of worship are generally similar to those still practiced by other Chinese communities in Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, and Macau. But despite the common thread that runs through traditional beliefs and rituals, and the fact that the island is comparatively small with good communications, local practices in Taiwan differ considerably from region to region, even within a few miles. Although Taiwan has separate Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian temples, the common man blends the practices of all three with a measure of superstition and ancestor worship. To further confuse matters, most peasant devotees refer to this religious hodgepodge by the umbrella term Buddhism, even as they regularly visit local folk religion temples to worship heroes and deities unknown to Buddhism. There is little concern for logic in folk religion. Where two worlds meet, many traditional temples, particularly the smaller ones, appear deserted except on festival days. Then they are alive with activity from dawn to dusk. While incense is burned, the reservoirs of the temple's oil lamps are constantly topped up to the tolling of a bell, providing devotees with a flame to light their paper offerings. Larger temples are almost always bustling with devotees who present offerings of incense to the deities, or who seek advice through the use of divining blocks or sticks. Religious solemnity is not one of the earmarks of these temples. Some village temples even double as schools, stores, and recreation centers. Temples are often cool spots where ladies and elderly folks meet and chat with acquaintances, relax, or play cards. Because the supernatural and human worlds coexist in the popular folk religion of Taiwan, temples represent the place where the two worlds can meet and communicate. The living devotees provide the resident deities with incense, oil, and food offerings. In exchange, they receive advice and protection against demonic influences responsible for such earthly sorrows as plagues, disasters, and illnesses. There are any number of requests that might be put to a deity. Devotees may ask for something as minor as assistance for a child in passing a school examination, or as dire as a cure for a terminally ill family member. An unemployed man might ask for a job, a pregnant woman may request an easy delivery. These problems can be put to specialists like the goddess of fertility, or to general practitioners who can hear any requests. Although devotees do not always leave the altar satisfied, most do feel renewed hope and comfort. Even many Chinese who are skeptical about the god's powers perfunctorily carry out rituals, just to stay on the safe side of the mysterious heavenly powers. The inquisitive visitor's first insight into the nature of Chinese folk religion comes from the architecture and decor of the temple buildings themselves. The classic lines of Tainan's Temple of the Holy Mother at Diriyar Gate. Left, the awesome altar of Matsu's main shrine at Diriyar Gate. Right, a devotee. Dragons and phoenixes. One important element of architecture is the temple roof. This is where one finds the most ornate decor and skilled craftsmanship. Indeed, temple roofs are alive with images of deities, immortals, legendary heroes, and fantastic mythological animals, all of which serve to attract good fortune to and repel evil from the temple and surrounding community. The center ridge of a temple roof usually is crowned with one of four symbols: a pagoda, which represents a staircase to heaven, a flaming pearl, which symbolizes the beneficial young spirit, the sun, and usually is flanked by two dragons, a magic gourd, which is said to capture and trap evil spirit, or the three-star gods of longevity, wealth, and posterity. These roof symbols usually reflect the role of the temple's main deity. Often one of these symbols tops the main gate, while another crowns the main hall. Below this central symbolic image are the fantastic and often gaudy assortment of figures so much associated with Chinese temples. The eaves slope down, then rise again in sudden curves, with multicolored dragons and phoenixes, fish and flowers flying from the tips. The phoenix, a mythical bird said to appear only in times of extreme peace and prosperity, and the dragon, symbol of strength, wisdom and good luck, are the two most auspicious symbols in Chinese mythology. These exterior features, however, are at first glimpse very much the same in Buddhist and folk religion temples alike. Inside, the difference is much more obvious. Buddhist temples and monasteries in general contain few images, with 1 to 3 major gilded Buddhas on a main altar. Confucian temples, severe by comparison, do not contain any images. The image of Confucius can be found on 1 or 2 of the altars of a few folk religion temples, however. Homes of God in the eyes of devotees, folk religion temples are the public residences of the deities. Taiwan's temples were originally built in the 18th and 19th centuries by Chinese craftsmen. They range in size from small, dog kennel-sized shrines containing 1 or 2 images or tablets to large establishments with several main halls flanked by minor ones, each holding separate altars and murals. As a rule, a temple is named after the chief deity on the main altar. Even if the temple has a literary label or is home to a score of other gods, the locals still usually refer to it by the name of its principal deity. Once drab with age and lack of maintenance, many of these old temples have been renovated in recent years. In some cases, their colorful new ornamentation has transformed them into exotic curiosities that may appear garish to the Western eye. Modern folk religion temples have also been built, especially in central and southern Taiwan. These are invariably large and costly buildings with only 1 or 2 images. The interior decoration of folk religion temples varies considerably. Many of them contain fascinating murals depicting scenes from Chinese mythology and history. Pillars and balustrades may be intricately carved works of art. Most temples have guardians painted on the outside faces of the main doors. These pairs can vary from ferocious generals to more benign-looking military and civil mandarins, or even young learned scholars. The main altar of a typical folk religion temple bears the image of its major deity attended by minor aides, officials or servants. Fronting the principal deity is a smaller image of the same god. This miniature is borne from the temple precincts to bless devotees as they stand in their doorways, or is carried during festivals to other neighboring temples. In addition to the main altar, most temples also have 2 secondary altars flanking the main one on either side. In some larger temples, there are further altars down the side walls. Beneath the main altar, at ground level, are 1 of 2 forms of small altar. One contains a tablet dedicated to the tutelary or protective spirit of the temple itself, the other contains stone or wooden white tigers, the bringers or destroyers of luck. A common offering for these tigers is a slab of fatty pork. Incense and other offerings. There are always 5 items on the table before a temple's main altar. A large incense pot is flanked by 2 decorative vases and 2 candlesticks. The incense pot itself is a primary religious object. In some temples it is regarded as the most sacred. It is filled with ash accumulated by years of worship, and is the repository for the spirit of the venerated Jade Emperor. Ash is taken from new temple. In some temples, the main incense pot is situated just outside or inside the main entrance. It is here that devotees begin their round of prayers and offerings. They place 1 or 3 sticks of incense in each pot throughout the temple, depending upon the seniority of the deity before whom the pot stands. In addition to incense, offerings include food and drink, oil, and objects made of paper. The type of food provided depends upon the season, the appetite of the particular deity, and the pocketbook of the devotee. Food is normally left at the temple only long enough for the deity to partake of its aroma, a period often defined as the length of time it takes for an incense stick to burn down. Afterwards, the food is taken home to the dinner table of the devotee and his or her family. Any leftovers are later disposed of by the temple keepers. In some temples, only fruit and vegetables are offered to the gods. One particular cult prohibits offerings of duck. In season, boxes of mooncakes, baked pastries stuffed with sweet bean paste, are placed on temple altars. Bowls of cold-cooked rice are often left before minor deities, including underworld gods. Tea or wine, in rows of 3 or 5 small cups, is occasionally offered. Nothing is ever presented in groups of 4, that is regarded as the number of death. Another form of offering is paper money, tied in bundles and placed under the image or on the altar table. This hell money represents either large sums of cash drawn on the bank of the underworld, or else lumps of gold or silver taels, the currency used in Chinese imperial times. Jingxiang, Shangxiang, Baishan is a ritual of offering joss incense accompanied by tea and/or fruits. It is observed by a devotee holding joss incense with both hands in front of an altar while praying or meditating. For added respect, the devotee or descendant is expected to kneel during and after placing the incense in the urn or at the altar. The number of joss stick varies. When a devotee uses 5, the sticks each represent respect for Tian Di Jun Qinshi, where Tian and Di denote the realms of heaven and earth, Jun the ruler, which could be Guanxingdi, the prime minister, or another leader, Qin the kins and relatives, and Shi one's teacher or teachers. When offered with 3 joss sticks, each stand for Tian Di Ren, again Tian and Di for the 2 realms, and Ren for all humanity as well as those who are deceased. Lastly, it can also be practiced with 1 joss stick, denoting all creation, including both heaven and earth. Rarer still would one use 9 josses, which come to denote all of creation and all of heavens. Joss incense is sandalwood or sandalwood scented, as the scent of sandalwood is believed to calm the human spirit or yuanshan. The same effect is believed to affect the spirit of a deceased ancestor. In this connection, it also serves as a notice to the deity an adherent is respecting. It is not a form of food to gods. Usually jingxiang is done with an offering of tea, in a number corresponding to the gods, typically 3 cups. Fruit is generally offered to accompany jingxiang, again the specification differs for temples or deities. Hungry ghosts in addition to the gods, ancestors are also commonly at the receiving end of offerings and tokens of respect in temples. Traditionally, ancestral tablets were kept in family homes, and respects were paid at a living room altar. Increasingly, however, families have paid temples to house the ancestral tablets on a special altar and assumed the responsibility for offering and prayers, especially if there is a possibility of neglect at home. These tablets bear the ancestors' names and photographs. It is important that they be given regular offerings, lest they become hungry ghosts. According to Chinese folk religion, a soul upon death is hastened through the various courts and punishments of purgatory in order to be reborn again. At the same time, there is the contradictory belief that the underworld is remarkably similar to the human world, and that its inhabitants require food, money, clothes, and a house. Thus, when a family member dies, the living relatives do their best to see that the spirit of the deceased enters the underworld in comfort. They provide food offerings in the hope that the aroma will give sustenance. They offer spirit money and paper artifacts, elaborately designed like the real things, to represent houses, cars, clothes, and often servants. These substitutes are transported to the underworld by burning. Relatives who fail to care for the spirit of a deceased family member set another hungry ghost loose in the world. Once every year, for 15 days in the 7th lunar month, the needs of these ghosts are met in the festival of the hungry ghosts. At this time, when hungry souls are released from the underworld to roam the human world in search of sustenance, Chinese families take steps to propitiate these spirits. Fearing the depredations this rampaging band of ghosts might inflict, they burn paper money and leave food on the edges of streets just outside their homes. Most towns in Taiwan also hold a large parade. Images of the tutelary city god and his 2 generals are carried around streets, patrolling to monitor the ghosts' behavior. At the end of the 15-day festival period, local temples hold banquets for the ghosts. Temporarily appeased and gratified, the spirits return to the underworld for another year. The Chinese pantheon, a huge pantheon of gods and goddesses, colors traditional Chinese religion. Most are the heroes and worthies of Chinese myth, legend, and history, deified either by imperial order or popular choice. Some can even be equated with the saints of Christianity. Some of these deities are so well known that their images are found in many or most temples. Others are unique to a single temple. Some communities have cult followings that have grown up around a particular historical figure believed to have protected or guided the town, or to have worked a miracle there. The best-known deities have proven their reputed powers to generations of Chinese over the centuries. Dozens of identical images may be lined up on altars beside the statues of some deities. These represent the gods' armies, complete with infantry and cavalry. Such supernatural soldiers command offerings of food from temple worshippers. In return, they protect their territory from the hungry ghosts and demons which threaten with such calamities as flood, drought, accident, sickness, and crop failure. The fascinating origins and legends that surround these deities go deep into Chinese history. They reach devotees through street opera themes, tales related by professional storytellers in tea houses, or at mother's or grandmother's knee in much the same way as the legends of King Arthur and Robin Hood have survived in the West. It is generally believed that the altar images of deities are temporary residences for those gods, and that the spirit is only present in the image when required. Many devotees consider incense to be a lure to entice a spirit into an image. Others maintain that a deity's spirit is omniscient, and is contained within each and every image portraying him from the time the statue is consecrated until it is retired. Some devotees believe that the power of a deity in any particular statue deteriorates with increasing age and eventually loses its efficacy completely. When this happens, the temple's following must either obtain a new image or have the old one recharged at another temple whose deity is still powerful. The Chinese, being pragmatists, will only pray to those deities whose supernatural must been proven by answered petitions. Kuan Yin and Quan Kun, the two deities most frequently seen on altars in Taiwan's temples, are Kuan Yin and Quan Kun. Kuan Yin, regarded by the Chinese as the goddess of mercy, has evolved and transformed through centuries from its prototype, Avalokitesvara, an Indian bodhisattva who forswore nirvana in order to save mortals. Kuan Yin is a shortened form of a title which means one who sees and hears the cry from the human world. Worshipped especially by women, this goddess comforts the troubled, the sick, the lost, the senile, and the unfortunate. Her popularity has grown through the centuries so that she is now also regarded as the protector of seafarers, farmers, and travelers. She cares for souls in the underworld and is invoked during post-burial rituals to free the soul of the deceased from the anguished torments of purgatory. No other figure in the Chinese pantheon appears in a greater variety of images. Kuan Yin's standard image depicts her as a barefoot woman carrying a small upturned vase of holy dew. She may be seated on an elephant, standing on a fish, nursing a baby, holding a basket, with 6 arms or 1,000, 1 head or 8, one atop the next. The main identifying factor is her bare feet. On public altars, Kuan Yin is frequently flanked by 2 aides, a barefoot, shirtless youth with his hands clasped in prayer, and a maid demurely holding her hands together inside her sleeves. Her principal feast occurs yearly on the 19th day of the 2nd lunar month. Quan Kun is the second most popular of deities in Taiwan. A historical soldier of the 3rd century AD, he fought with 2 sworn companions to try to save a disintegrating dynasty. When captured by the enemy in 220 AD, he refused an offer to defect and was decapitated, proving his loyalty. The courage of the 3 heroes has been chronicled in one of China's most famous novels, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Today, Quan Kun is the patron deity of such disciplined groups as soldiers and policemen and of merchants and businessmen, but he is often incorrectly referred to as the god of war. In Buddhist temples, he is one of 2 guardians on the main altar. Also known as Quan Ti and by a score of other titles, his image is easily recognized by the severe puce or red face. Often he is accompanied by his 2 cohorts, Cho Sang, a tall, black-faced sword-bearer, and Quan Ping, his scholarly adopted son. Quan Kun may be standing or seated, astride a red horse or holding his black beard in one hand and a book in the other. His festival is held on the 13th day of the 5th lunar month.
Jade Emperor and other deities. Among the most important of other deities worshipped by the people of Taiwan are the following. Yu Huang Shang Ti, the Jade Emperor. Also known as Tian Kung, he is the supreme deity of folk religion. His rule was traditionally conceived of as equal to that of the reigning emperor of China. His special concern is meting out justice to men through his subordinate deities. He is ultimately responsible for the deification of other gods, or for their dismissal from the pantheon as and when necessary. On the Jade Emperor's birthday, special sacrifices of pork, chicken, duck and occasionally goat are placed before his image. Although the emperor himself is considered a vegetarian, he is believed to feast with meat-eating friends. The emperor is usually depicted with two servants who hold fans above his head. In a few temples, he is flanked by civil and military aides. Tian Kung's wife is rarely depicted on the altar. Images of the Jade Emperor normally show him seated in imperial robes, his flat-topped crown notable for the short strings of pearls that dangle from the front. He holds a short, flat tablet in both hands before his chest. Historically, he did not come into prominence until the 9th century AD, considered fairly late by Chinese historical standards. The San Quan Ta Ti, three great rulers. This trinity rules heaven, earth, and the waters, and is regarded as second only to the Jade Emperor in the pantheon's hierarchy, which bears important similarity to the imperial Chinese bureaucratic structure. Devotees look to the San Quan to deliver them from evil and calamity. Originally worshipped throughout China, they are the main deities at about 60 temples in Taiwan, especially in Taoyuan and Hsinchu counties. They are depicted as a trio of identical images who sit on side-by-side thrones, three bearded mandarins with scholars' bonnets, each holding a tabiat in front of his chest. The demon slayer, the doctor and the goddess of sailors. Suan Tian Shang Ti, the supreme lord of the dark heavens. He is also known as Shang Ti Kung and to foreigners as the Northern Emperor. Suan Tian, a famous exorcist and slayer of demons, is depicted on altars as a fierce soldier, dressed in armor and usually seated. He has bare feet that rest on a tortoise and snake, makes a magical sign with the fingers of his left hand, has unkempt hair, and is often accompanied by two aides, General Kong and General Tian. He is also the patron deity of butchers and of people setting up businesses. Pao Sheng Ta Ti, the great emperor, protects life. Also called Ta Tao Kung, he is revered for his ability to cure the sick. Regarded by the people of Taiwan as the patron deity of native medicine, Pao Sheng was a legendary physician of the 10th century AD. His fame spread after he healed an ailing empress. Pao Sheng's image, easily confused with that of other deities, usually depicts him as a seated, benign, bearded mandarin accompanied by two of his 36 warrior aides, or occasionally by youths each carrying a box of medicinal herbs. Pao Sheng is the main deity in about 140 of Taiwan's temples, chiefly in Fukienese communities around Yunlin and Tainan. He does not appear in temples of the Cantonese ethnic minority. His birthday is celebrated on the 15th day of the third lunar month. Ma Tzu, also known as Tian Shang Sheng Mu or Tian Ho, is an exceedingly popular figure throughout Taiwan. Legend claims that she was the daughter of a 9th century Fujian fisherman named Lin. One day, her father and two brothers were caught in a typhoon at sea. The girl, asleep at home, left her body during a dream and appeared from out of the clouds above the boat. She grasped her two brothers with her hands and her father with her teeth. Unfortunately, the mother at home kept asking the body of the sleeping girl what was happening. In desperation, Miss Lin answered, but in doing so lost her grip of her father. Miss Lin died at the early age of 20 and some believe she was deified by the Emperor of China. She became the patron deity of sailors, but evolved into a goddess to whom any problem could be put. Her image is usually that of a seated dowager wearing a flat-topped crown with a bead screen similar to that of the Jade Emperor. She normally holds a scepter in her right arm or a tablet before her chest. Her two assistants are demons that she subdued and turned into loyal servants, the green Qian Li Yen, eyes which see for 1,000 li, and the red shun feng ears which listen for a favorable wind. There are about 375 temples in Taiwan in which Matsu is the principal deity. Among the most important are those at Lukang and Tainan. Her birthday is celebrated on the 23rd day of the third lunar month. There are large parades in all the major ancient port towns, with special theater performances in Peikang and Lukang. Gods of city, earth and kitchen Cheng Huang, the city god appointed by the Jade Emperor to protect a specific town and its inhabitants. In some cities, there might be 2 or even 3 city god temples, one each for the city, the county and the prefecture. The city god is the final judge on what should be recorded in the report on each soul of those who die within his parish. He also acts as a link between mankind and the higher gods. In some city god temples, a large abacus is suspended from a ceiling or wall with the inscription, "Beyond human calculations." In other words, man's life is ordained by fate. Among the city god's retinue are 2 generals known as the harbingers of death, Si and Fan. Legend says they were friends on a military campaign. Fan was drowned during torrential rain by a flash flood when Si had gone for an umbrella. Filled with remorse, Si hanged himself. Their images now tell the story. Si wears white sackcloth for mourning, carries an umbrella, and is depicted with his tongue hanging out. Fan, the shorter of the 2, has a black face indicative of drowning. In city god temples, they can be seen with black smeared around their mouths. This is said by some to be opium, by others sweets. Either way, it is a bribe to beseech them to be light on punishments. The image of the city god himself is almost identical with that of the Jade Emperor. It is best differentiated by the images of the attendants around him, like Si and Fan. Chu Xing Nyang, the matron who registers births, and the goddess of fertility. She receives the souls of the deceased after they have been purified in purgatory, and decides into which human body the soul will be reborn. Her image characteristically holds an open book in one hand and a writing brush in the other. Kai Tai Shing Wang, the saintly king who settled Taiwan, better known to history as Koxinga. His story is told elsewhere in this volume. His image is approached by devotees for advice and guidance. His festival is celebrated on the 16th day of the first lunar month. Fu Te Cheng Shen, the earth god. Every community has an earth god who protects the parish. In return, all births, deaths and marriages must be reported to this god. Among his responsibilities are controlling ghosts and protecting crops from pests and disease. He rarely has a temple to himself, and in rural areas frequently resides in a small roadside shrine. His standard image is that of a smiling elderly man, seated, dressed in blue robes and carrying a stick. His festival falls on the 2nd day of the 2nd lunar month. Sao Chun, the kitchen god. His crude likeness on a cheap print or a tablet rather than a wooden image is found over the stove in most traditional Chinese homes. From this location, he sees and hears the family's domestic affairs. Thus the week before Chinese New Year, when he reports directly to the Jade Emperor on the family's activities of the past year, he is given a proper festive send-off by the family. By the time he returns on New Year's Day, a new print has been pasted up over the stove. Wang Ye, also known as Wen Shen, the gods of pestilence. Varying in number, according to legend, from 36 to 360, these deities destroy demons which cause plague and other pestilence. Many small temples are built to them throughout Taiwan. San Tai Tzu, the third prince, a mythological deity also known as Na Cha, and patron saint of spirit mediums. Easily recognizable in images, he has a white or pink face and highly decorated robes. In one hand is a jade bracelet, in the other, a sword or javelin, and beneath one bare foot is a firewheel said to be able to carry him through the skies. Wuing Chang Chun, the 5 spirit generals. Their images take the unusual form of a rack containing 5 sharp spikes, each topped by the carved head of a general. Local heroes deified. There are hundreds of additional deities. Among them are unique local heroes, like the Japanese policeman who saved members of one local Chinese community, and earned deification. Another temple is dedicated to the spirit of a buffalo. There are some extremely popular deities. One of them is the so-called monkey god, Sun, the great saint, about whom legends abound and whose mischievous acts are retold with great glee. Another is Chi Kung, a Buddhist monk well known to folk religion, whose ribald exploits were said to include frolics in nunneries and a love for dog meat despite his vegetarian vows. There is also a small group of temples in Taiwan that contain wooden memorial tablets to the spirits of those killed while resisting bandits or who died for the common good in clan wars. With the multitude of deities to be found in Taiwan, it should perhaps not be surprising that many devotees know neither the name nor the function of the local deity to whom they pay reverence. In a majority of temples, there are individual altars dedicated to a theme: fertility, health, agriculture, crafts and trades, or the like, rather than to a particular deity. Buddhist images also occasionally turn up on the altars of folk religion temples. In addition to Kuan Yin, these include the historical Buddha, Sakyamuni or Gautama, the Buddha of the future, known as Milofu or Maitreya, and Northern Buddhism's Omidefu. Others might include Weitu, the guardian of the Buddhist law, and Ti Sang Wang, the savior of souls. The 18 Lohan, disciples of the Buddha, are often represented in temple murals for convention rather than for worship. Take out temple images. The images of deities are carved in specialty shops like those that line the road east of Taipei's Lungshan Temple. Images brought to Taiwan from the mainland before 1949 are prized for quality workmanship, as are those fashioned by the artists of Amoy in Fujian Province. In contemporary Taiwan, Lukang is generally reputed to turn out the finest master carvers. Even with the increasing numbers of modern assembly lines on the island, the traditional carvers of temple images have an ample market for their craft. In fact, some temples stock quantities of images of their major deity. These statues line the walls or the altar table and are loaned or rented out for personal devotions. One rural temple south of Taichung, for instance, stocks about 50 small images of Shen Nung, the agricultural god, standing in serried rows down the sides of the main hall. Farmers with crop problems borrow the images, and return them with an offering after the harvest season. Communication between a devotee and a deity can take several forms. One of the most common methods involves the use of two kidney-shaped diving blocks with flat and round surfaces. Worshippers hold these in incense smoke before an image while putting their petitions to the deity. Then they drop the blocks on the ground. Depending upon how the blocks come to rest on their flat and round surfaces, the god is believed to have replied, yes, no, or try again. Another method of getting messages from the spirit world is through the use of divining spills. 60 to 100 of these numbered sticks stand upright in a tube. The devotee rattles the container in front of the deity while whispering his wish. Eventually, one stick works its way up and out of the container and falls to the floor. The number on the spill corresponds with a printed fortune slip, the deity's response, kept in a rack behind the counter of the temple keeper. Some devotees favor the use of a forked stick and sand table. Two worshippers, possessed by the deity, hold the stick while it automatically races through the sand, writing characters that can only be deciphered by the temple keeper. Each character is smoothed away after reading to make space for the next. Spirit mediums also act as intermediaries between the living and the supernatural world. Most mediums, known as Danki, hail from southern Fukienese and Chao Chao communities of Taiwan. They operate in many of the traditional temples, speaking and acting in the manner of the deities that are believed to have possessed them. In particular, the monkey god, San Tai Tzu and General Chao are the deities most commonly thought to provide advice and to cure ailments through human mediums. In the case of the monkey god, a special device known onomatopoeically as a ping-pong bottle indicates when the deity's spirit is present in his image. The device consists of a long, narrow-necked bottle with a flat base that is upturned into a second bottle containing water. The base of the upturned bottle is made of paper-thin glass. Devotees believe that when the base pings, the spirit of the monkey god has entered its image, regardless of whatever changes in atmospheric pressure may have caused the sound. A spirit medium possessed by the monkey god may actually crouch, leap, scratch and walk like a monkey before settling down in a chair to write prescriptions for worshippers' problems. A regular practice of entranced mediums is nicking their tongues with knives, broken pottery or skewers, and wiping the blood onto papers that are then burned by devotees. The ash is taken in water as a kind of medicine. During festival celebrations, mediums often stick skewers through their cheeks and tongues or pierce their backs with tiny fish hooks weighted down with objects that pull against the skin. The mediums appear to feel no pain in their trance much in the same manner as Hindus in several overseas communities who endure the tortures of their faith's Thaipism festival. Other than these dramatic displays of religious fervor, certain temples in Taiwan perform various rituals throughout each and every day. Temple staff members are always on call in case a devotee requires some form of ritual assistance. As many as a dozen different rituals may be performed simultaneously, in small groups each with a different member of the temple staff, and with other devotees lining the walls awaiting their turns. Usually, these are purification or exorcism rites. Staff members, who routinely oversee them, are dressed in street clothes, but they are clad also in a ceremonial red hat and carry a whip and buffalo horn trumpet, or a handbell and sword. The practices of these red heads include spitting a fine spray of rice wine over hot coals to produce spurts of flames. These temple attendants also preside over rites that involve small wooden palanquins, carried in the temple by pairs of youths or older men. As the chair begins to shake, faster and faster, it is believed that the spirit of a deity has descended into the palanquin. The deity then uses one of the bearer's poles to scratch messages into the ground. Such rites are aimed at strengthening the armies of the supernatural to drive off invading demons and hungry ghosts. They frequently involve talismans, magical signs chalked on benches set over trays of lighted candles, as well as food offerings. Human figures move in designated patterns amid clouds of incense smoke in the dimly lit temple halls. The extraordinary sounds of buffalo horns and the steady throb of drums can give a very eerie feeling to casual onlookers and demons alike. Visitors are generally welcome to temples so long as they do not intrude upon devotees engaged in prayers or rituals. It is customary to place a small monetary contribution in the large box that usually commands the center of the temple court, or on the temple keeper's counter. This represents xiangyao, an oil and incense offering for the deities. Images of the deities should not be touched.